Should you ever find yourself intertwined in an ideological joust or a debate, there are many tactics that are often deployed in order to throw you off of your game. Tactics that are either intended to mislead the audience or derail the opposing argument, many of which have absolutely nothing to do with the substance of the debate. These tactics are labeled logical fallacies, and it would be a good idea for anyone who has aspirations of tightening up their debating skills to recognize these tactics and call them out accordingly. The tactic highlighted in this discussion: Argumentum Ad Baculum. Argumentum Ad Baculum occurs when an argument is based on the foundation of do X or else consequence Y. So in other words, persuading consent by the threat of force, which would make Argumentum Ad Baculum perhaps one of the most recurring logically fallacious tactics utilized in parenting. Let's say a child wants to go outside and play, but mom and dad says, "No! You need to pick up a book and study your lessons instead." The child says,
"But it's Saturday. Why do I have to stay inside and study schoolwork when all of my friends are outside having fun?"
Mom and dad says, "Because we said so. Now go study, or else."
Your word is mine. No.
Mom and dad could have answered the question by taking the opportunity to highlight the virtue found in delaying gratification. Even taking the time to tell the story of the ant and the grasshopper, where when everyone else was living the life of laissez-faire, the ant worked and prepared for the winter, and when winter came, the grasshopper, who played outside and partied while the ant worked, had nothing to eat, while the ant was warm and cozy with a full belly, all because he did the work when he had the opportunity not to. But instead of using that approach, mom and dad discouraged their child from any further inquisitions by responding with Argumentum Ad Baculum. Now, a strange note about Argumentum Ad Baculum: first of all, it is a Latin term, but then there are sources citing that the English translation of Argumentum Ad Baculum is argument to the stick or appeal to the stick. So in other words, an argument backed up by the threat of using a stick. But if we were to break the term down word for word, argumentum means argument, ad is a preposition meaning to or toward, and baculum means animal penis bone. But if appeal to the stick falls more gently on the ears, we'll stick with that one, so long as you've been informed as to what a baculum actually is.
To come out transgender is horribly difficult. It is the most difficult thing you can do. I've been overseas, I've flown helicopter missions, surveillance missions, I've been shot, stabbed. Being brave is being yourself, and being transgender is about the bravest thing you can do. Did she deserve the award?
65?
Yes.
Why are we mainstreaming delusion?
It's not delusion.
Why would you call it delusion?
Because Caitlyn Jenner, I'll call him Caitlyn Jenner.
No,
because
it's
that's
her. You're not being polite to the pronoun.
Because
disrespectful.
Okay, forget about the disrespect. Facts don't care about your feelings. It turns out that every chromosome, every cell in Caitlyn Jenner's body is male, with the exception of some of his sperm cells. It turns out that his brain structure is male. It turns out that he still has all of his male appendages. How he feels on the inside is irrelevant to the question of his biological sex.
I don't agree with that. I'm not on that train. I'm not on that train. She wants to be called she. I'm going to call her she. But in terms of the science behind gender dysphoria, you're very familiar with that, Zoe.
Very familiar.
It's not about the chromosome. Excuse me, the chromosomes within our
both know
nuclei. Yeah, go ahead.
Chromosomes don't necessarily mean you're male or female.
Gender.
With gender,
Gender
of course.
identity. Go ahead. No, so
especially, but even so, you have a thing like Klinefelter's syndrome. So you don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on genetics.
Would you like to discuss the genetics? Or
well, no,
what
no.
are your genetics?
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 Notice the use of the outlandish argument?
Yeah, go ahead.
Chromosomes don't necessarily mean you're male or female. But even so, you have a thing like Klinefelter's syndrome.
In other words, using an anomaly to justify the whole. Klinefelter syndrome, which is a rare condition that occurs in males, whereas most males have XY chromosomes, with Klinefelter syndrome, the male has XXY chromosomes, or in other words, an extra copy of the X chromosome, which affects sperm development, intellectual development, and the physical development of the male with Klinefelters. But when Ben Shapiro asked his opponent a question that would expose the weakness in the argument, essentially saying that no one in the room has Klinefelters, yet you use that as your basis that XX and XY define nothing, because someone, somewhere, has Klinefelters. Realizing the unavoidable logic trap should he answer that question honestly, he disavows himself of the intellectual exchange, and instead...
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Argumentum Ad Baculum. So sometimes if your opponent is lacking logic in their argument and you are able to recognize their deviation into Argumentum Ad Baculum, there isn't much more that can be said when your opponent's only recourse is to threaten your well-being as an answer to your dissenting point of view. And you'll have to determine for yourself whether or not it's even worth your time to further pursue debating them, and risk the possibility of your opponent making good on the threat. Because at this juncture, the only path forward is to carry a bigger baculum. Support the channel by hitting the like button, commenting, and subscribing for more content.